Luxury crimes are on the rise in major cities, especially robberies and thefts. Just 2 months ago, a luxury store in London was broken into, and the robbers stole about £500,000 worth of luxury handbags. The store shared their story on TikTok, and apparently most of the handbags stolen were Hermes and Chanel, so it tells you these people had already done their research before the break-in. There was another case where a guy was eating in a restaurant in London, and then 3 people approached him, and in a split second, they took his Rolex watch. And I've seen several other stories where people wearing Rolex watches were attacked and robbed. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, a luxury store was broken into 6 times within 3 weeks. I mean, isn't that crazy?
They broke into the store about a year and a half, 2 years ago, 6 times in 3 weeks. Ridiculous. And they stole over $250,000. Good Lord.
In fact, things got so bad that the owner actually decided to close down the store after having been in business for 42 years. And in New York, a group of people have been targeting UPS and FedEx trucks. In one of the many occasions, they stole 8 Gucci boxes, which were worth about $30,000. So why are we seeing this rise in luxury crimes? Well, there are a few reasons, and I think the first one is definitely economic pressures. Since COVID, we've seen some serious inflation rates across the world, which means cost of living is suddenly a lot higher, especially in major cities. I live in quite a small town, but even then the prices of everything have gone up by a lot. Let me know what you think, but in my opinion, this kind of economic tension is one of the reasons why we're seeing more and more luxury crimes. The second reason is because of social media. Nowadays, a lot of people share their lives online, myself included, and that of course is a risk in and of itself. In July 2021, Tamara lost her entire luxury bag collection due to a break-in.
My apartment got broken into and everything got stolen.
I'm sure many of you already know Tamara. She's a very successful fashion blogger with a huge following, and maybe that was why she was targeted. But I think as long as you have an online presence, the risk of exposing yourself is always there. Another reason we are seeing more luxury crimes is because of how easy it is to sell luxury items online. There are now so many consignment websites. In fact, the second-hand luxury market has been growing faster than ever in the last few years. I've sold many of my own luxury items, and I would say the process is quite simple as long as you don't mind paying the hefty commission fees. All they really ask for is a few photos of the item that you want to sell, and they will take care of the rest. So it really is easier than ever to offload for quick cash. I really wish there was a centralized system where these businesses can have a database where they can very quickly identify stolen goods using things like serial numbers. Or maybe there's already a system in place. If so, please let me know. I'm also very interested to know if you have a habit of writing down the serial numbers for your luxury items. Now let's move on to the precautions we can take to protect ourselves. The obvious ones include protecting your luxury items with insurance, getting a home camera, and avoiding tagging your live locations, especially when you're away on vacation. And when you are out and about, especially in busy areas, it's very important to be alert of your surroundings. Although, to be honest, I'm not really sure if that really helps that much. For example, a man in Paris was targeted when he was dining at an outdoor cafe. A thief snatched his Rolex and ran off. Everything happened so quickly, so the victim had no time at all to react. And in many occasions, these robbers work in group, so it can really leave you in a very vulnerable position, even if you're hyper aware of your surroundings. Many years ago, my husband was pickpocketed when we were in Rome. And here's the thing, we thought we were being very careful, but when the guy was trying to steal from us, we didn't feel a thing. It wasn't until one of the locals very kindly gestured to me that I finally realized something was happening. Luckily, we had done a bit of research before the trip, so we had nothing on us and we didn't lose anything. But still, the experience was really unpleasant. So I think if you don't want to deal with the stress at all, maybe it's a good idea to stay away from luxury items that are very well known. For example, certain Hermes handbags, Chanel handbags, Rolex watches, Cartier bracelets, Van Cleef necklaces, and other classic luxury items. As many of you know, these pieces are loved by a lot of people, which means there's always a high demand on the secondhand market. Now, I'm not sure if these luxury crimes will get better soon, but if you're worried, consider staying away from these very recognizable luxury items until things feel safer. In the past, I used to limit myself to these highly targeted brands when it came to buying luxury items. And I think the main reason was because of the prospect of resale values. Whenever I bought something, I wanted to know that I could recoup some money if I changed my mind and wanted to sell the luxury item. But after selling so many luxury pieces from my own collection, my mentality has changed a lot. I now prioritize practicality before anything else. This means I much rather buy what I will use and not what I might sell, if that makes sense. For example, a while ago, I was offered a Birkin 25 in the color grey. Now, I knew I wouldn't use the bag much because I can just imagine the horror of color transfer. So even though I could potentially sell the bag quite easily, I said no to the offer because I just didn't want to bring home something that I couldn't really enjoy using. In the last few years, I've also been leaning towards mid-range luxury bags for several reasons. First of all, these bags are not as common, which is great, especially if you don't want to be an obvious target. And secondly, the price range is quite a lot lower, and that really gives me the peace of mind because if God forbid something happens, I wouldn't be as devastated. Last but not least, many of these pieces are actually very well made. This salmon bag, for example, is about $250. This price point wouldn't even buy you a mini pochette in a Louis Vuitton store, but this bag is made of leather inside out. I feel like this can be a wonderful everyday bag for a lot of people because the leather is so durable, the design is adorable but practical, and it can fit so much for such a small bag. Another brand I've mentioned time and again is Ateliers August. I've never been sponsored by them, but I just think they are a great option to consider, especially if you're really into luxury handbags with amazing craftsmanship, but at the same time you want to look low-key because you're a little bit anxious about carrying certain mainstream luxury bags. I also want to touch on the topic of traveling with luxury items because if you're not careful, you might put yourself in the spotlight for the wrong reason. This is especially the case when you're traveling to a new place and you're not too familiar with the environment and the aspect of safety. On social media, I'm sure you've come across people who travel in style. By that I mean they have all kinds of luxury suitcases with a lot of logo that you simply cannot miss. For example, the classic Louis Vuitton suitcases and the Dior travel pieces. They are stylish for sure, but you really don't want to make yourself an easy target before you even leave the airport. In fact, in Europe, there are organized crime gangs that target tourists in very popular holiday destinations like Madrid, Ibiza, Barcelona, and so on. One of the victims was a British Olympian. He was traveling in Barcelona a few months ago when he had his Rolex stolen. Sadly, this is now the reality we live in, and there's nothing much we can do about it. But one thing that we can do is to try to stay away from unwanted attention. I personally love traveling, so I really need my suitcases to be well made and sturdy. But I don't want to showcase any logo because the last thing I want is to stand out for the wrong reason. This is why I always go for low-key travel pieces. At the moment, I'm using this suitcase by Carl Friedrich and I'm absolutely loving it. And if you're wondering, no, this video is not sponsored. Anyway, as you can see, this is very discreet because everything is in black and there's no logo anywhere. This really is my perfect suitcase because it just looks so incredibly sleek, minimalistic, and low-key. Not only that, this is such a sturdy travel piece and every corner of it is so well made. I especially love the wheels of this suitcase. Rolling this suitcase around is honestly a dream because the wheels glide so beautifully. And by the way, they are really quiet as well, which is always a bonus. Now, Carl Friedrich is well known for making very premium travel pieces, but even then, their prices are only about 20% of what you would pay for a Louis Vuitton suitcase. So just so you know, there are plenty of cheaper but better options out there. Something else I always do when I travel is to only bring a small selection of luxury items. Typically, I like to bring a small luxury handbag and a very curated selection of jewelry. This way, I don't have to check them in, so I can keep them with me at all times. Now, in many hotels, the safe they provide is only tiny anyway, so ideally, you really don't want to bring too much with you. Now, whenever I'm choosing a luxury bag to bring on a trip with me, I tend to prefer a crossbody bag to a top handle bag. I also always avoid handbags with an open top because they are not exactly very practical, especially in crowded settings. This is why, as much as I enjoy my Hermes Birkin 25, I never really travel with it. In terms of jewelry, you might want to consider wearing something quite dainty and minimalistic, and something that's not too recognizable as well. For example, you might want to go for a necklace with a small diamond pendant rather than a big Van Cleef Alhambra. Now, obviously, all this depends on where you're traveling to. For example, I personally feel safer in certain places than the others. So I guess you just have to make adjustments depending on where you go. But regardless of the destinations, I always like to look low-key during transit and also when I go to a new place. It's a shame to see where the luxury landscape is heading, and of course, it's scary as well because a lot of these crimes are actually happening in broad daylight. At times, it can feel really unfair because sometimes luxury items are more than just things. They can be a reflection of hard work, a commemoration of special memories, and sometimes even family heritage. But depressing as it is, we cannot ignore the reality. So I really recommend that you take the necessary precautions to protect yourself. Stay safe out there, take care, and I will see you soon.